like to begin by singing a song for you written by Swami Kriyananda. This is one that we don't hear very often, and I have a dream next year of this song being done in its 4-part version, which I am unable to do by myself. But it's always been one that's touched me, and I'd like to read Swamiji's comments about it afterwards, rather let the song stand on its own at the moment.
Of this world made her sigh. Her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was why. She saw the solemn clouds gathered watching a rainbow, the bright rays of their joy filled the sky. Her teachers explained it all wisely away, but still her heart pondered why. She saw the silent stars thrill the night with their gladness. They seemed some wondrous truth to imply. The magic of night, her elders all slept, but the magic of night awoke her to ponder why. She saw a mother smile as she tended her baby, a widow weep that love had to die. The joy of new friends and the sadness of parting, all these made her ask God why. One night into her heart stole the secret of oneness, the bond not even time can untie. For love there possessed her and made her his own. In love she at last learned why.
Swamiji wrote in a book that he wrote a couple of years ago, not long, it was published actually just after he left the body. This song represents the history of my life. Though I am obviously not myself a tender maid, I have never been nor have I sought to be a macho male, indifferent to the tenderness of wonder at the nature of human existence. As a child, I asked myself constantly, why are we here? Why are there stars in the sky? Why do we feel love in our hearts? Have we no higher destiny than death? My own solution was the same as that of this tender maid. I came to see at last that underlying all the innumerable expressions of life, there is one uniting consciousness. In unity, I found my answer to that eternal question, why? This is the third song that I ever wrote. Finally, such was the answer I too found to my own seeking. This reading today, talking about I am the way, the truth, and the light. Light or life? Life, excuse me. No one comes to the Father but by me. This is one of those mysteries that provokes the question why or how or what is the answer? How do we understand it? And growing up in the Christian tradition myself and later coming to this yogic path, it was a conundrum for me that was sitting really right in front, kind of as an obstacle almost, because I didn't want to be unfaithful to the tradition that I grew up in. And at the same time, I was growing beyond the expression of it as it was presented to me and as I could understand it and relate to it. And it's interesting because if you just think of those words and imagine that someone is saying those words to you, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. You would have to conclude something. Those words are going to make you do something. They're going to either make you think this person is way off the deep end. You know, the egotism is like beyond all comprehension. Or it's going to make you think that the I that he's speaking of is something that is not bound by his body, that it's not the typical way that most people say the word I this, I like this, I don't like that, I really want to go somewhere, or whatever, all the usual ways that we express ourselves personally. And so think in these words, this question, how, why? And I love the song because it asks this question that, in a sense, I believe all our hearts are asking. We live in a mystery. We've come into a mystery. It's like we come to the table of life and we find everyone playing a game, and nobody gave us the rules to the game. We arrive, people are busy buying and selling, trading and rolling dice and putting cards down and doing all the things that happen in games. We don't know why. We don't know how or what the exact rules are. Some people are more slippy at figuring out those rules and they get ahead in the game seemingly. And yet it's a mystery to all of us. And there's no answer that anyone else can give us. That's part of the mystery. We can read in the scriptures, but only when we are ready to attune to those scriptures does the message of the scriptures make sense to us. Because otherwise we can read things like, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light, or be still and know that I am God, or any of the Psalms, Psalm 23, and they're beautiful, they're lovely, but they may just sail right over the top of our heads. And other times we can read something very simple and it touches us to the core. It moves us to our very depths. And the question is, where are we in the equation? And I had an experience years ago. It was not one particular experience. It was actually kind of a chapter, you might say. It was a little saga during a period of my life. Swamiji wrote the oratorio from which we've been hearing in this Christmas season a fair bit of the music. And for those who came to the alternate Christmas meditation, we actually went through almost the entire oratorio, singing along with it. And it's very moving, very beautiful and powerful. Well, when the music was first composed in the early 1980s, Swamiji had the songs paired up with slides that he had taken in the Holy Land. That's how that music was composed. It was composed in reference to the special places in Christ's life that represented certain kinds of consciousness, and Swamiji captured that musically and expressed it, but he also captured it photographically. And so there was a time back in the day when the technology was such that we had 2 slide projectors and we had a fancy reel-to-reel tape recorder, and which had 3 tracks, one for each speaker channel and a third that was called the dissolve track. And my job for a period of time came to be bringing that program to churches around the country, first in California and then later on in Illinois and other places. And so this adventure began with me going out, meeting various church leaders, mostly priests in the Catholic tradition, but also some others, and organizing showings and then later going to present the showings. And so I did this for a while, and I got to be in I got to meet some wonderful people. I got to meet some kind of dreadful people too, actually, which really surprised me. You're going to meet all stripes in every tradition, I suppose, but I was shocked a few times. One priest challenged me as to why was I doing this. And I said, because I love the program, I love the music, and I feel like this is a way to share the blessings of Christ. And he said, well, why didn't you make it into a video and become a millionaire? And it was like, excuse me? I didn't even understand the question. First of all, the chances of us selling 1 million of them just seemed a little out there, but we did later make it into a video as it happened, and no, we didn't become millionaires, but I was so surprised that the materialistic side, that was basic, that was where he could resonate. That was his wavelength. And then on the other hand, I met some priests that moved me to tears. They were so refined and so elevated in their consciousness, just as this affirmation today. One place in particular, I really had a deep spiritual experience just being in this fellow's presence. It was in the Chicago area. And while I was having the interview with him, we were in his office, right behind his head, in such a way that I could not help but see him in juxtaposition to this amazing picture, was a picture of Krishna. This is a Catholic priest in the Chicago area with Krishna on his wall behind his head. And I didn't want to mess anything up, so we got the program organized, that was all done and ready. 6 weeks later, I came back to do the program, and when I met him in the afternoon as we were getting set up, I said, I have to ask you, how do we get this picture behind you in the office? And he said, oh, well, we're the most populous Indian presence in the Chicago area, and so there's lots of Indians who come here, so I have Krishna. And it was just, for him, it was just like, yeah, well, why wouldn't I? Of course I have Krishna here. But it was very sweet. It was very disarming, actually. It was really very endearing. But one of the things that happened, being in all of these sacred places, I got to see the stained glass that they all had in these churches. And of course, in the slides that Swamiji had taken were amazing slides of Notre Dame in France and Sacré-Cœur. Probably didn't pronounce it right, but anyway, you get the idea of that church, and other places as well. And the striking beauty of the stained glass and the images contained and the inspiration that led to the beautiful designs. And they're huge. They go up 50, 80, 100 feet or more in some cases. And And it struck me, and Swamiji himself has spoken about this occasionally and even written about it, that you see that beauty and it reminds you of something, because there are a number of lessons in it. One of them is that they're not quite as beautiful at night because there isn't really any light shining through them, unless they've organized, huge external lights that shine up, and then from the inside of the church you can see in and see the beauty of them. But in the night, they're just relatively dull. Yes, you can see that they're pretty, but you can't see that they're exquisitely beautiful. In the daytime, with the sun blasting through, oh my God, you just feel like you're going to soar off the planet. That's a fascinating image of how our consciousness works. There is a light behind all of us. We are little colors of stained glass on the window of the church of God. And when that light shines through us, there's beauty in it. The colors themselves don't have that much meaning just separately and individually. And when we stay on the inside of the church looking at those colors, we can perceive beauty behind them. But if that's all that we ever do, there's a saying in the Indian tradition that it is a blessing to be born into a religion, but a misfortune to die in one. It's kind of an interesting and challenging supposition, because when we're born into a tradition, we have structure, we have a path, we have a trajectory, we have a way to move forward in life. But if we're stopped and stuck in that limited awareness, it's trying to tell us to go beyond form. And the stained glass window of life is trying to steer us to the light that's behind it. Because the light is what's beautiful. It's what makes the stained glass itself become alive and become truly beautiful and sort of reach its potential. Now, most people, if they just look at light by itself, they can't perceive all the nuances of it. Master, seeing some of the disciples, could tell them, you have no idea how beautiful you all are. I see you all as light, as brilliant light. And most of us don't see that kind of vision because we're looking at the world with two eyes. We're not looking at the world with one eye, like the song describes this sense of unity, this sense of inward fulfillment that touches us at a core level, at a very, very deep level. We go behind the stained glass and experience the light, and we will begin to realize the light has the potential to light up all the stained glass in the universe. And all of us have our part to play as the colors of God. And it's perfectly wonderful and it's perfectly fine, but let's be limited on that side of the window. Let's also go to the other side and experience the light directly. And that's where the challenge of this reading comes in. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Christ is God's presence in this universe. He is the living presence of the Father beyond creation, in creation. He's in every particle of space, beyond the farthest reaches of the galaxies, beyond the reach of all our telescopes. Christ's presence is in all of that, and of course in our hearts as well. We have to learn to live it. And it struck me that Swamiji says at the end of the reading, the Bhagavad Gita reading, study the lives of the great ones and tune into their consciousness. And it struck me that, it's easy for us to say, well, I could never be like Swami or like Master because, well, I can't write 150 books or 400 pieces of music, or we list the outward things, or like Master, to come to this country, to initiate 100,000 people into yoga, to give lectures to thousands and millions, to write all these books, to found an organization, to do all this outward stuff. But that isn't the issue. That isn't the question. In a sense, we don't become like a saint. We magnetize ourselves to the divinity in that saint, and we become our own saint. I was reading a little bit about Saint Ignatius, and how part of his inspiration for taking up the path in a very serious way was he was wounded and he was ill afterwards, and was essentially laid up injured, kind of crippled for a while. And he had nothing else to read but the lives of saints. Sort of an interesting juxtaposition of challenge, because he wouldn't have chosen to do that necessarily, but his karma kind of directed him to be in this situation where that's all he had to read. So he read about St. Francis, and he read about St. Augustine, and he read about all these different ones. And his conclusion wasn't, oh, well, I could never do that. His conclusion was, that which they have done will I also do. And he decided he would be a saint. And it's a fascinating thing to think, because it sounds very egoic. I'm going to become a saint. Well, I'm going to... Even the ringtone says, ha, 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 ha. You think you can become a saint. And we have this little voice that chirps off in our little ear and says, ho, 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 you think you can? Well, good luck to you, pal. And yet, what are we going to listen to? Are we going to listen to the hint on the inside that says you can? But you will be your saint. You're not going to be someone else's saint. You're going to be the saint that God made you. You're going to be the color that God made you in the stained glass window of life. And that beauty will come through you in some unique and powerful way. And all of us have to step away from that thought, oh, but how could I? The energy of life moves through all of us to do something powerful, to do something unique. And we can choose to go along with that. We can choose not to. As the affirmation was saying, we can achieve a better perspective from the mountaintop than from the depths. The view from lying sideways looking up at the curb is not a very high view. The curb may seem a little imposing. When you're standing up, you just step over the dumb thing. It's not that big a deal. We have to see that view from the heights and realize that all of these saints, they didn't come to discourage us or to make us think, oh, well, my goodness, how could I ever do that? Well, maybe you couldn't. But you could be a saint in your own way, in your own being. And that's the pathway that is described and that we'll speak of in the Festival of Light in a few minutes. That's the path that we all walk. It's the journey of every soul. And as this year is wrapping up, and as we're in the 12 days of Christmas, and this energy of Christ's presence is a little bit more manifest. Why is it more manifest? It's more manifest because people are more tuned into it. It's not any more manifest in the middle of June or in the middle of March than it is now. It's just that we're more aware of it. We're more dialed into it. Let us attune and tune into the lives of saints. Again, not to be like them outwardly necessarily, but to follow the path that God gives to each one of us as truly as they followed their path. Be a master as truly as that master has followed the path all the way home to the goal. That's the destiny of each one. And for all of us who have in one way or another asked the question, like the song, why? Why is this world? Why is there suffering? Why do people die that we love and we don't see them now, and our hearts are anguished for the lack? Why do we not understand? Because we have to open our hearts big enough to understand. A child does not have the perception or the perspective of an adult. A 2-year-old, you can't explain about all the nuances of what's going to happen when you start your own family or when you embrace your own adult life. All of us are still children in many ways, and we have to expand our hearts mainly. Our minds, yes, to some extent, but the expansion of heart leads us to the expansion of mind. And in that, we can follow the path one step at a time in the moment. And that's one of the great gifts that the saints give us. Christ can say something challenging like that, and the disciples are completely beflummoxed, or at least some of them, I suppose, are. And yet in their hearts they can understand because they can feel his reality on the inside. It's the heart that gives us that kind of attunement. So as we look forward to this new year and as we release our hold on the year that is ending, let us look to that heart expansion and that high-mindedness. This is the gift that the masters would give to all of us in this season. And let us receive that gift and take it for our very own in the coming year. Namaste. So we'll take an offering.